Welcome to Notable Approvals. I am attorney Amanda Shaffer. Really excited to talk about our case today. Before I do, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you are watching. And if you find this video to be helpful or know someone who may, please go ahead and click that share button. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, our contact information is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. If you are watching on Instagram, you can go to our bio page and find our contact information there. And of course, send me a direct message. And you're gonna have to strap in for this one. It's a lengthy one. If you want to hear the short version, the 60-second or less version, after this, I'll be recording a quick version to go up on Instagram. I'll probably get up on the other channels as well. But I definitely think it's worth digging in here with me because I got to say, this is a very interesting case. This story, I literally could be a movie. So let's begin. Clients right now, and since they entered the US, are residing over in Queens with they came with 3 children, now have 4 wonderful children. The husband is a native of the United Arab Emirates, or UAE, and a citizen of Pakistan. The wife was born in Pakistan and is also a citizen of Pakistan. They entered, the husband and wife and their 3 kids entered the US in 2014 with B2 visitor visas. They applied for asylum early 2015. There was no 1-year issue. And 2015 was a long time ago. I remember vividly when these clients came in. Back in 2015, things were quite different in the world. I wasn't married or engaged. No COVID had happened. Donald Trump had yet to announce his presidency. This was 8 years ago. And I remember when they came in from the beginning and they told us about their claim. And from day one, I felt that they had a very strong claim and they had a very high probability of getting granted at the asylum office, which, if you've seen any of my other videos about asylum cases, I mention is a very rare occurrence, because they can't deny them. If they find anything off at all, they refer it to the immigration court. So, their asylum claim, it all started back in 2008, 2009, when the soon-to-be husband and wife, but at the time strangers, met each other when they were taking some adult education courses. They fell in love and decided they wanted to get married. Well, there was one problem. The wife was a Sunni Muslim, and the husband was a Shia or Shiite Muslim. So 2 different sects of Islam. Oh, sorry. I hear Aaron going, no, 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 next door. So there is a lot of conflict between Sunnis and Shias in Pakistan and in some other countries as well. But Pakistan in particular, there is a lot of violence against religious minorities, particularly against Shia Muslims. And there are a lot of terrorist organizations there that are known to target these people. So essentially, what happened was the husband, as is tradition, sent over a mediator, what they call a mediator, to the wife's family's house to ask for her hand in marriage. And as part of that process, the mediator tells the family about the wife's or wife to be suitor. And of course, she had to tell him that what his religion was. And upon hearing that he was a Shia, the family rejected the marriage proposal and said that it was blasphemy and to marry outside of the religion, that, and then just that it was the worst thing she could do type of thing. Um, and again, there's this ongoing conflict. And I said they were known for killing or attacking religious minorities. Also, there's kidnappings, all sorts of horrible things. And really, the police either didn't want to do anything or they really just weren't able to. So the my clients said, you know what, who cares what the wife's family says. The husband's family didn't really care. We love each other, we're going to get married. So they ran to uh, get married that same day. They and eloped. So like basically like a Vegas wedding, going to the chapel and they're going to get married, but going to the mosque, I guess. So they got married, and the wife then called her mom and said, "Listen, we got married. This is what I wanted." So okay, hangs up the phone. Then, and at the time, her and her husband were at, I think, a friend's house. And all of a sudden, not too long after that, the police show up at the husband's family's house looking for him, saying that they got a police report that he kidnapped his wife or now wife, and forced her to marry him. And they wanted to arrest him. And the parents said, he's not here. We don't know where he is. And he did not force her. She was very much consented to this marriage. So because they paid a bribe, they let it go, the arrest, but he still had to defend himself in court. He actually had to hire a lawyer, and the wife had to testify at the court that she consented to the marriage and that her father lied to the police and filed a fake police report. However, so the case was dismissed. They believed her case was dismissed. However, the police never arrested the father. They never did anything about it. After that day, things didn't end, unfortunately. The father and the brother continued to threaten the family. And this was all oral threats over the phone. They would call, say they're going to kill them if the wife didn't leave the husband, that they needed to, she couldn't be with him. There, all these terrible, horrible things they would say. And they were living at the time at the husband's family's house. They were worried, but at that point, nothing had turned from verbal to physical, so they weren't overly concerned until spring of 2011. The husband was at the mosque praying with one of the sons, and the wife was at home with the two kids at her parents-in-law's house. And about, I think, around 5-6 men broke into the mosque, vandalized it, punched the imam, and then attacked the husband and stabbed him in the shoulder. Really, really deep wound in his shoulder. He was, and one of the people that were there, who broke into the mosque and was attacking everyone, was his wife's brother or his brother-in-law. He didn't know who the other people were. So he was rushed to the hospital. Actually, the police were called and took him to the hospital. And then someone at the mosque called the wife and said, "Your husband's been stabbed. He's in the hospital." And at the hospital, the husband filed a police report and told them that one of the men who attacked him was his brother-in-law. And then the police informed him that, and he said, "I don't know who the other men are." Police said, "Well, the other men who were with you were members of these two terrorist organizations that are specifically known for attacking Sunni Muslims, especially Sunni Muslims who have the audacity to get married to a Shia Muslim." And I say audacity sarcastically because there should be nothing wrong with that. So they write a police report, and the wife finally gets in touch with the husband. He says, "Don't come to the hospital. It's not safe. Stay indoors with the kids. I'll come, back home when they release me." So he was in the hospital for 6 days. Finally gets released, goes back home. Police never do anything. They claim they can't find the brother, even though they know where he is. So the family realizes, okay, we're not safe here in the city. We need to get out of here. We need to go somewhere else. So they pick up, move the family about 2-3 hours away from where they were living. Um, and they felt relatively safe. Um, the husband even at one point traveled. He's an importer exporter, traveled to the U.S. on business, and this was only months before they ended up having to flee the country for good. But he felt relatively safe at the time because about 3 years passed before any more problems. But this entire time, the brother was continuing to make threats. Now, I forgot one small but important thing. Um, One of the reasons they were safe until 2011 was because the father was alive, and it seemed that the father was keeping the brother in check. And, they were making these verbal threats, but wouldn't let him harm his daughter. Father died right before, about, I think, either in the same month or the month before that the stabbing happened. So the brother now is unhinged. And they vowed to track him down and not rest until they found the family and took care of the family, killed the family. So, unfortunately, that day came, um, that he found them in 2014. The husband that day was at the market with his two oldest kids. The wife was at home with the baby. And all of a sudden, she heard a noise, and 6 men broke into her home um, with pistols. I gotta say, this woman, the way she acted under pressure is amazing. I mean, it was an instinct, and she was like cool, calm, collected under pressure, considering what was about to happen to her. So they break in, and they say that their brother sent them, that they're going to, you know, kill her, her baby, her husband, and her other 2 kids. So she runs into where the baby is, and where her cell phone was, grabs the baby, grabs the cell phone, tries to call her husband. But by the time she was about to call them, the men had gotten to that room. So this is where not only was her instinct smart to go obviously get her baby and the cell phone, but she took the cell phone and put it in the baby's like onesie so that the men couldn't find it. And then they took her by gunpoint out to a vehicle outside, put her in the vehicle, and started driving about 2 or 3 hours. In the car, she was obviously terrified, crying, and whenever she cried, they'd slap her. They were, saying all sorts of horrible things to her. And then they called the husband and said, "We have your wife and your baby. We are taking her to the city. This city. Um, you need to come with your other 2 sons so that we can kill you all as a family. You will receive another call telling you where to go. Don't come with police." So the husband goes home from the market, which was like 15 minutes away, gets another call when he gets home. It's his brother-in-law this time, and tells him where to go. And it tells him basically about a mile away from where they were holding the wife. They wouldn't give him the exact location because they didn't want him to show up at the police. So the husband gets in the car with the kids, drives to the police station in the city where his wife was. He then Siri decided I asked her a question. Sorry about that. So he drives to the police station, goes to file a police report, and get the police assistance in rescuing his wife. So at first he explains what happened, and he says, "I don't know any of the names of the men who who broke in to the house and kidnapped my wife, but I know the brother was involved." And they say, "Well, we can't help you because you don't know anyone's name of who the kidnappers were." So then he says, "All right, fine. It was the brother. I know that it was a brother, and this one other name he gave, and he knew that name because when he was stabbed, the police told him that name, and there was reason to believe it was the same people." So the police said, "Okay, well, the second problem is, well, we got to find her." So he's like, "Well, maybe she has a cell phone." And because she had the cell phone on her in the baby's onesie, they were able to triangulate her location to basically exactly where she was. So basically, the instructions he had were to get literally like drive to some road, get out of the car, get in another car, and then they would drive him to the spot where the wife was being held. Um, and instead, he was able to come with the police. And when the attackers or kidnappers saw that he was with the police, they fled. And they fled so quickly that they actually left behind their weapons. Fortunately, he found his wife and son unharmed, and everybody was okay. But it was clear that they couldn't stay in Pakistan. Um, Obviously, the brother was still threatening, and he found them there. It was clear he was going to find them no matter where they went in the country. Fortunately, the husband and wife, they had already applied for. The husband had his B2 visa, and he applied already for the rest of the family. And within maybe 2 to 3 weeks, they were able to leave the country and come to the U.S. And no arrests were ever made for the kidnapping, of course. So they come to the U.S. and they settle in Queens, and they come to us in 2015. We file their asylum application. These clients were very unlucky with some of their timing in their case. Their asylum interview took 2 years from when they filed to when they were interviewed, which actually wasn't even considered that bad. But I will never forget this asylum interview. It was what I would say an asylum interview from hell. And I say that because we had to get there. The time for the interview was like 7:15, and we didn't leave that day until 3:34. When you go to an asylum interview, you have to bring your own translator. And the client had asked us, "Do you know anyone who can translate from Urdu?" And we tried to find someone, but that we knew, and we weren't able to. So we said, whenever we're not able to, we just hire a company. So we helped them locate some companies that they can hire a translator. And this interview's all the way out in Long Island. So, and this was a situation where, since I live in New York, in Manhattan, and I don't have a car, this place where your asylum interview is in the middle of nowhere. So the client, actually, I took an Uber to the client's house and then got in the car with him and his family, which was interesting. I was dropped off in the middle of Queens. I was like, all right, at like 7 a.m. It was a long day. So he hired a translator, and we get to the interview, and the translator is not there. So he calls the company, and they essentially ended up having to send someone else. Turns out this lady, it was her first time ever translating for an asylum interview, which was not ideal. So what happens is, when you bring your own translator, which you're required to do, and I don't know honestly why, because at any other USCIS interview in court, you're not allowed to bring your own translator. They provide someone. But in the asylum interviews, you bring your own translator, and then they have someone on the phone listening for compliance purposes to make sure the translator isn't, changing what was said. So, we filed applications for both the husband and the wife because they both had claims. They both were actually a part of every major incident. And we were hoping they would be interviewed separately and it would increase their chances of getting granted. They refused to interview them separately. They put them together. Fine. So we're at the we got delayed being called in because we had to wait for the translator. We get called in, and it was one of the longest asylum interviews I've ever sat through. And they had such a strong case that I was really surprised how long it took. Now, part of the reason was there were a lot of issues with the translator, and this is a good lesson to learn. I mean, these clients in this situation, they did their best. They hired a professional translator, and this is what the company gave them. There's not much more you could do in that situation. But it is important, if you do bring someone to translate, that they know how to do it, and they know how to do it properly. Because this lady, and she was a really sweet woman. I remember her, because she actually felt really bad at the end, and we were like, it's okay. She just was having trouble. I mean, the phone interpreter listening on the phone usually says nothing. They kept interrupting because my client would say in Urdu that, that's she understood enough English, like very little, but enough to know that some of the things she was saying wasn't being translated properly. And we had submitted some really detailed statements for them. We had all the police reports. So the fake one from the kidnapping, along with the court dismissal order from that case. We had and then the other two police reports filed by the husband when the family was attacked. And then we had the medical report when he was in the hospital. There was in Pakistan, the local news covers a lot of police complaints. They're public, I presume. So they were actually in the paper a couple times. We had those articles. So you had every piece of the puzzle you want in a case to get granted at the asylum office. A really strong case. And then it comes down to the interview. So, the wife was really the main one questioned, since even though we could have had either client be the lead, it was the wife's family, so we decided it should be her. So there's just all these issues with the translations. And then, to my surprise, they start getting into the asylum officer starts asking questions about material support of a terrorist organization. Now, it didn't even occur to me that this could be an issue. I spoke about the material support bar not too long ago in one of my videos, and how lately they seem to be bringing that bar up a lot for someone who's been a member of a group who's maybe it wasn't a terrorist organization now, but now is, or provided some, allegedly provided some support. So it just wasn't something back then, especially that came up too much. And in this case, it was quite clear that the wife, she didn't, and the husband, they had no idea her brother had anything to do with these terrorist groups until the husband was attacked. As far as she knows, he's not a member of the group. He might be, but that's still unknown. We don't know his exact affiliation, but it's not like they had meetings at her family house or anything. She knew nothing about it. But they were asking her all sorts of questions about him, and then asking her questions about if she ever cooked for him, ever cleaned for him, or any of his friends. It was really intense. And if you're wondering, well, why would they ask about cooking and cleaning and whatnot? Well, there's case law that says that even if you are forced and it's against your will to cook for somebody who is a known terrorist, or you reasonably should know is a terrorist, then you're providing material support to a terrorist organization. Now, as I said, the wife did not know. It was common in her household and in plenty of households for the females to cook for the males, for the male members of, or the whole family for that matter. So when she lived at her parents' house, of course she cooked for them, cleaned for them, did whatever. But when she found out the brother was affiliated with these groups, these terrorist groups, by that point, she was already on the run from her family. And she never did anything for them after that point. But I remember just being like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. Like, this is the last thing you want when you're in asylum interviews, have your clients grilled about being terrorists. And what, and I knew, based on what I knew about them as human beings, that I 100% believe them, that they did not know. They were not the type. They had a nice family. They, again, like the biggest cue here, or hint that they were not terrorists, is that there's this it's not just terrorism, it's religious extremism. And that's what her family's problem was that they were religious extremists, or at least the brother was. And a religious extremist from Pakistan who is a Sunni Muslim would never marry a Shia Muslim. They would never get into a relationship with one. They wouldn't even probably talk to them. So that right there, for me, if I'm an asylum officer, is enough. But they had to do their job. It was just a long interview, and they had to also bring their kids. Their kids did not sit in on the interview. They had to actually bring a friend to watch the kids. So it was like, took forever. And I was surprised because I really did feel their case was strong, and I did think it would get granted, but it wasn't. It was referred to the immigration court, and the reason that was given was inconsistent testimony, or inconsistent with the evidence. And I was like, well, it's good that there's nothing about material support to terrorism, which is really good, but it also doesn't mean that the issue can't come back up. And when they were put into removal proceedings, on the charging document, they were not charged with material support for terrorism. They were just charged with a visa overstay, which is the common charge. But I said to them, look, they can amend the charges at any time, and even if it's not on here, they could still bring it up and make a big deal about it. So we had to prepare for it. So their first immigration court hearing, their master hearing, was scheduled in 2018. And then they scheduled the individual hearing 2 years later, which at the time seemed like a long period of time. Now cases are getting scheduled 4 years out. So it was scheduled for October 2020. Well, guess what happened in October 2020? Well, COVID already had happened. The courts were closed. Case got rescheduled. And even though the courts were closed, that was chaos back then. We didn't know what was happening when they'd reopen. I was posting, every 45 days or something, whenever they would announce an extension of the court's closing. But we still submitted all of the updated evidence in May of 2020, which included updated statements, how the brother was continuing to call the husband's family's house and making threats because he wanted to find them. It was just an ongoing situation. You have to index and tab everything, all the evidence, which means you have to put in literal tabs so that easy to find. You have to Bates number it, so every page has a number, and make an exhibit list with all the page numbers and what the exhibits are. So we submitted a nice thick packet for both of them, but then the case was moved, and which is also frustrating because, if it's moved 6 months, you're not really worried about submitting new documents, but when it's moved to 3 years, then you're like, what am I gonna do? Do I have to resubmit everything? And it depends on the case. So the case was moved to 2022, like I said, October 2022. And I actually did not remember why the case was moved until the judge reminded me. I actually got COVID for the first time in October of 2022. I have been COVID free until then. And I would just like to thank, if she's watching out there, Burju for the COVID, or Burju's friend for the COVID. It's a friend of mine. It's a I was with her and on a group trip, and that's how I got COVID. Thought I was immune, wasn't. So unfortunately, because I got COVID, I couldn't do the case. So we had to reschedule, and the case got moved to August 2023. And I felt really bad that I had to move it, but like when I got COVID twice. I had one more time since then, and I got really sick. Like, could not do anything sick. So that I would have done it virtually if I could, but and I had even prepared the clients. Like, Aaron actually prepared them because I was sick. We were hoping I would be able to do it, but I was still sick for the hearing. So it got rescheduled for this month, and unfortunately, given a 3 p.m. time slot, which is late, considering the courts technically close at 4:30. And I knew how long the asylum interview was, and I was really worried that we wouldn't get it all done. And I've had another case. I've had other cases where we started the case, we couldn't finish, and then we had to adjourn it and then I had one case that got adjourned for 4 years. And it's hard to continue a trial that way. So I was, pretty stressed about this case because I knew these people were waiting for so long now. 2003 now meant 8 years since they filed. And when you're waiting for asylum, your life is it feels like you're in limbo. You're waiting to see, am I going to get to stay in this country or not? Am I going to have legal status or not? So where was I? Oh yeah, so late time slot, and it was a virtual hearing, so the clients came to my office, and I also had to talk to them about prosecutorial discretion, which is something these days I'm talking to every client about, just in case. They do now have a U.S. citizen child who was born in the U.S. after they came here. It was born in 2017, so the child's very young. But technically, when the child turns 21, she can file for them. So I was expecting the trial attorney for DHS to say to me, are your clients interested in prosecutorial discretion? So I had to go through that with my clients beforehand. And I said to them, look, if I were you, my recommendation is to go forward because I think you have a really strong case. Yes, we have this inconsistent testimony, but we don't know what it is. Country conditions, I ended up not having to submit anything new because nothing changed. Brother was still sending the same threats. Sunnis and Shias are still in conflict in Pakistan. The country condition reports were the same. So I was like, look, you have a really strong case, but it's a risk. If you lose, then you will have a removal order. And yes, your daughter can still file for you when she's 21, but then you're going to have to get rid of the removal order. And there's no guarantee then you'll be able to. I'm like, but if your case gets dismissed now, you don't get a removal order. However, you lose your work permit, and you're going to have to wait now. Can't even do math. 3, 6, wait 15 years just to file. Not get your green card. 15 years she can file for you, and then it takes time after that. So I told him to think about it, but we had already prepped it. We had 2 prep sessions, long prep sessions. I had like 16 pages of questions because when you prepare for these hearings, you try to talk to the trial attorney beforehand so that you know what to expect at the hearing. Usually, I end up talking to him right before the hearing starts. Like we start, the judge leaves, and we talk. And because because of what we went through at the asylum interview, we were expecting the same at the individual hearing. So I had to prepare them for everything. I said, most likely they won't have an issue with your background or identity, and we'll get to the asylum claim. But I also now have to prep you for the material support bar or material support of terrorism bar, just in case they go there. So we were all prepped, ready to go. Clients are here. We're logged in at 3 p.m. and the case before us was still going on. We find out, the judge tells me to come back at 3:30. We then find out at 3:30 that there was two other the court was triple booked yesterday at 3 p.m. Triple booked. Seemed like the other two cases were only on for a decision, but now we're starting late, possibly having to do two other cases first. And I'm thinking this case is going to take 5 hours. So I'm like, great, like this. And then the judge, so then turns out that they couldn't finish the other two cases for whatever reason it was. But they dealt with those cases and then they turned to us. And now it is like 4:00. And the judge says to me, I don't mind staying late if the interpreter, if the trial attorney, if for DHS, and you don't mind staying late. So it's fine with me. Everyone said they were fine. And then I said, well, figured I should tell the judge, like, I'm thinking she's not telling me how late she's going to stay. So I go, Your Honor, just so you know, like, I don't know how fast we can get this done, because when we were at the asylum interview, it literally took all day. I have 16 pages of questions here. So she's like, okay, why don't you conference with trial attorney again? We're going to take a break for 20 minutes and see if you can narrow it down even further. So I said, okay. And the judge comes back. We're all back at 4:30. So the judge says, okay, if you guys don't think we can complete this in an hour, then we'll have to adjourn it. And so the trial attorney says, I'm confident we can complete it in an hour. And I was like, all right. So one of the things I've learned over the years in my experience in immigration court is you follow the lead of the judge and the government attorney. So unless it goes against what you want. I was happy to do a quick trial. It was a positive sign that he wanted me to kind of cut through to really the heart of the claim, like not even get all the I gave you more background today. I went through more facts today than we did at trial. I didn't even have to go through most of that. Also, the husband was supposed to testify too about all of this. So I knew it was a good sign immediately, as long as the wife was able to testify consistently with her statement, it was going to get granted. So we start, and I cut to the heart of the claim. I go through a lot of those facts I told you, and then I was probably, I had to streamline these questions. I really had to cut a lot out and kind of just, go on the fly. It's funny how sometimes you prepare so much for court, and then it's just never what you prepared for, even in this situation, even when it's a good thing. But I did it. I was almost done with my questions I was going to ask, and the government attorney cuts me off and says, if it's okay with you, counsel, I could take it from here. And again, that's a good sign, because that meant I did my job. I got her story out. I knew it was consistent with all the evidence and what she said, and that the government attorney heard enough that he believed her, and he just has to ask, some of the. Sometimes there's a couple more questions, and then security questions. So he asked her, I think, if she would be ostracized by her family, if she's been ostracized by her family, which yeah, that's what we described. So she of course said yes, asked her a few security questions, was done, called in the husband, asked if it was okay that I skip my direct testimony, go to the cross, and then I can have broad discretion on redirect if I need to. Again, when the government attorney says that, you go with the flow. You say, all right, because then that what you know as an attorney is that your clients have to be given due process. Which means they have to be given their fair chance to tell their story at trial. So the government and the judge can't bully you or your attorney into cutting testimony short and then deny your case. And because then on appeal, you could say, we weren't done. We were rushed through this thing. We didn't want to, rush through. And it would get remanded back to the judge. So I knew this trial attorney. I've had a lot of cases with him. I know he's been a government attorney for a long time, very experienced. So if he's telling me that he's going to take it over from here, I trust him to that he's going to do the right thing and not create a problem. And then I didn't expect to have to do a redirect, and I was right. He asked just like basically what my client's religion was and the husband's religion was, and a couple of those security questions. At the end of that, the judge asked him, where do you stand? What's your position? He said, I'll defer to the court, which is DHS's way of saying I consent to approve without say you approve without saying you approve. I defer to the court. And then, at that point, again, I kind of already knew it was going to be granted, but that was, to me, my official was even more official when the government attorney agreed to waive appeal. And then the judge said, okay, I'm going to give an oral decision. And, I sit in a different room than my clients. So I don't want any issues with them thinking I'm giving them answers or, I don't want any problems. And it's easier to have our own, I put the headphones on and block out other things as well. So clients were sitting in the conference room a few feet away. I see their face on the screen. I could see that they could tell that they're about to hear something positive, but they're not positive that it's going to be positive. But I started smiling when the judge was going through all the things saying, I found you credible. I found you qualify for asylum. I'm going to exercise my discretion favorably and grant your asylum. And of course, they were incredibly happy. And so was I. After all of that, we completed the case in about 50 minutes, not even an hour. And now my clients and their 3 kids who were not born here are all asylees. In 9 months, they can start applying for their green card. And the kids too, everybody, they don't no longer need a work permit to work. And they can travel outside the country with appropriate documentation. So, like I said, this was a marathon case in the sense of how long it took from day of filing to day of immigration decision. 2015 to 2023. It was over 8 years. I think it was actually 8.5 years. I got to applaud my clients for their patience. I know it wasn't easy waiting all this time. I know there's other people out there waiting, and they're also struggling. My clients were lucky. They were lucky that things didn't change that made their claim a lot harder. The country, quote unquote, improves, then it can change your asylum claim, even though when you came here, it definitely wasn't safe for you. I've had that happen. They're also lucky because the court was very interested in pushing through cases. at right now because of how backed up they were. I mean, triple booked, like I said, and the other case went over. Um, so we were definitely overprepared. Oh, and the terrorism thing, the material support bar, not even a mention at all during the hearing. I got all worried. I stayed up preparing extra for that just in case, having my arguments ready, because you never know. But I was very happy it didn't come up. So yeah, this was a long case, um, lengthwise and notable approval wise. As I said, I'm going to do another video that will be, um, I'm going to try to capture all this in 60 seconds or less. So if you are tuning in now, if you're watching this on replay and you skip forward because I was talking too much, that sounds about right. And you want to get just a brief overview, you keep your eye out for that. Don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you are watching. If you are watching from YouTube or Facebook, our contact information is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And if you are on Instagram, if you go to our bio page, you can find our contact information there. And if you found this video to be helpful or know someone who may, please go ahead and hit that share button. Whew, that was a lot. All right. So that is all today for notable approvals. Thank you all for watching. Congratulations again to my clients. I'm so happy for you guys. It was a long time in the making. And like I said, from I think day one that you came to our office, one day it's gonna get granted eventually. And it did. Just took longer, a lot longer than we thought. So I hope you guys celebrate. And I hope that we see you in 9 to 12 months to start filing for your green card. And just one last thing, asylees are not actually required to file for green cards, as opposed to refugees who come from outside the country, designated as refugees. I won't get into all of that, but basically you could stay an asylee for your life, your entire life. Highly recommended you file for a green card. There are times when it's not. If you're not sure, contact us or another experienced immigration attorney. We'd be happy to help. So thank you all for watching and have a good day.